No, it is worth noting that I graduated from John Graham High School right here in Warrenton. I ain't over most of my last year, but still, this is where I graduated from. You probably see in the movie where it talks about, were you really willing and able, running down to Soul City? And I actually say something that's not totally in the film, because you got to chop it to get it everybody. But what I said was, when they asked me about moving, I said, well, I wasn't really running, and I went to LaGuardia High School of Music and Art. I was singing, modeling, dancing, acting in New York City. Lived in a brownstone. And my dad said, let's move to Warren County. Okay, well, I lived in Durham. But we were moving to a mobile home on a dirt road in Warren County. That was a little different. That was a major transition for somebody that was a teenager. So you'll see a little bit today of what this film, I think for many of us who grew up in Manson, Ridgeway, came to love as Soul City. I was approached, my brother and I have actually been approached for 20 plus. My father has been deceased almost 26 years. His birthday, yeah, I know. His birthday was just a couple of days ago, March the 9th. He would have been 95 years old. So, hard to believe, but, one of the things that the film brings out, or that the reason I started to work with the young ladies, is because my brother and I had been approached for many years by a lot of people. And quite frankly, it didn't feel right. I didn't either think they were going to do justice to the story or tell a perspective that would be balanced. My PhD is in mass media, communications. And even though we know we have a president right now who calls the media hatred names, and he gives alternative facts, the reality is media is one that preserves democracy. If we don't have the local newspaper, thank you, Lucy Weldon, but we don't have the local newspaper, who is keeping track of what happens on the county commissioners, the school board, those local entities in any community, not just Warren County. So journalism is key to democracy. So for me, these young ladies, I felt, would give a balanced perspective of Soul City. I will say even before we finish that I think the end should have an extra piece. I'm working with UNC-TV, so I'm going to tape an extra 60 to 90 seconds that will be added when it airs in North Carolina. And basically what it will say is, the legacy of Soul City is the Carr Lake Regional Water System that helped with economic development, not just for Warren County, but for Vance and Granville counties. And when you leave Durham County and cross over that border, everything you see on Interstate 85 is because of the Carr Lake Regional Water System. And the major entity there was the Soul City Sanitary District, who, by the way, in March, in Women's History Month, we need to also give recognition to Evelyn McKissick, the first elected official of Soul City. Can I get an amen? So, it doesn't tell the complete story, but it tells a pretty good story. And there's certainly more to be told, but it's a short. So there was originally a 20-minute documentary for a thesis for these three young ladies who were working on their masters at Wake Forest University in documentary studies. Because I'm in media, I happen to have known that program and some of the professors in it, and also knew their perspective in terms of keeping things what I consider to be objective as much as possible. So that's why I decided to work with them. And I know that almost everybody along the way, I've talked to most of them, wouldn't speak unless they said, did you talk to Floyd? Did you talk to Charmaine? So I think everybody has held this story close to them for a number of years. It's Jane, Wilhelmina, Ihsan, Miss Jackson, Early, everybody in the community, quite frankly. So I hope you enjoy what is 30 minutes of a documentary by three young ladies. First, originally, was an African American. Take it back. She's black. She's from St. Thomas on the island. Okay. A white female, Jenny, who was pregnant at the time, and now she's got a 2-year-old. Tells you how long it's been since we started. And then the third young lady was brought on, Monica. And Monica is Latino from Florida. So we really have a diverse group of people, which is also why I think we come away with a sort of different perspective. So I hope you enjoy it. I think it's a labor of love on their part, and then we'll have discussion with the women of Soul City. It is worth noting that I graduated from John Graham High School right here in Warrenton. I ain't over most of my last year, but still, this is where I graduated from. You probably see in the movie where it talks about, were you really willing and able running down to Soul City? And I actually say something that's not totally in the film, because you got to chop it to get in everybody. But what I said was, when they asked me about moving, I said, well, I wasn't really running, and I went to LaGuardia High School of Music and Art. I was singing, modeling, dancing, acting in New York City. Lived in a brownstone. And my dad said, let's move to Warren County. Okay, but we lived in Durham. But we were moving to a mobile home on a dirt road in Warren County. That was a little different. That was a major transition for somebody that was a teenager. So you'll see a little bit today of what this film, I think for many of us who grew up in Manson, Ridgeway, came to love as Soul City. I was approached, my brother and I have actually been approached for 20 plus. My father has been deceased almost 26 years. His birthday, yeah, I know. His birthday was just a couple of days ago, March the 9th. He would have been 95 years old. So, hard to believe, but, one of the things that the film brings out, or that the reason I started to work with the young ladies, is because my brother and I had been approached for many years by a lot of people. And quite frankly, it didn't feel right. I didn't either think they were going to do justice to the story or tell a perspective that would be balanced. My PhD is in mass media, communications. And even though we know we have a president right now who calls the media hatred names, and he gives alternative facts, the reality is media is one that preserves democracy. If we don't have the local newspaper, thank you, Lucy Weldon, but if we don't have the local newspaper, who is keeping track of what happens on the county commissioners, the school board, those local entities in any community, not just Warren County? So journalism is key to democracy. So for me, these young ladies, I felt, would give a balanced perspective of Soul City. I will say even before we finish that I think the end should have an extra piece. I'm working with UNC-TV, so I'm going to tape an extra 60 to 90 seconds that will be added when it airs in North Carolina. And basically what it will say is, the legacy of Soul City is the Carr Lake Regional Water System that helped with economic development, not just for Warren County, but for Vance and Granville counties. And when you leave Durham County and cross over that border, everything you see on Interstate 85 is because of the Carr Lake Regional Water System. And the major entity there was the Soul City Sanitary District, who, by the way, in March, in Women's History Month, we need to also give recognition to Evelyn McKissick, the first elected official of Soul City. Can I get an amen? So, it doesn't tell the complete story, but it tells a pretty good story. And there's certainly more to be told, but it's a short. So there was originally a 20-minute documentary for a thesis for these three young ladies who were working on their masters at Wake Forest University in documentary studies. Because I'm in media, I happen to have known that program and some of the professors in it, and also knew their perspective in terms of keeping things what I consider to be objective as much as possible. So that's why I decided to work with them. And I know that almost everybody along the way, I've talked to most of them, wouldn't speak unless they said, "Did you talk Floyd? Did you talk Charmaine?" So I think everybody has held this story close to them for a number of years. It's Jane, Wilhelmina, Ihsan, Miss Jackson, Early, everybody in the community, quite frankly. So I hope you enjoy what is 30 minutes of a documentary by three young ladies. First, originally, was an African American. Take it back. She's black. She's from St. Thomas on the island. Okay. A white female, Jenny, who was pregnant at the time, and now she's got a 2-year-old. Tells you how long it's been since we started. And then the third young lady was brought on, Monica. And Monica is Latino from Florida. So we really have a diverse group of people, which is also why I think we come away with a sort of different perspective. So I hope you enjoy it. I think it's a labor of love on their part, and then we'll have discussion with the women of Soul City.
So here you have the ghettos where people feel that nobody listens to them. Black people feel rejected. They feel like they're being pushed into a corner. They feel like there is no faith. There's not a chance. It's a matter of hopelessness, it's frustration.
And one of the things we key observed is that the inner cities were not working. People were leaving rural areas, going to the inner cities looking for opportunities. Opportunities were not there. They found themselves in devastating poverty frequently.
well known by that time, president of CORE, he'd been with Martin Luther King.
Now we're going to have a panel discussion with some of the women of Soul City. Let me first bring up Jane Ball Groom. Wilhelmina Kearney. Magnolia Jackson. Ihsan Abdin. And before I forget, I didn't put this together. It's a young lady in the community that reached out to all of us to put this together. So let us give a round of applause for this tonight. And of course, I know I saw come in, so I'll just go ahead and give my deference to Attorney T.T. Clayton. And of course, our own former Congresswoman, Eva Clayton. So I know these people too well, so I might tell something they don't want me to tell. So I think that they should talk a little bit about themselves, who they are, and their relationship to Soul City, and any other words I think in reflection about the film, and then I think we'll open it up to questions. Does that sound good? Jane, you want to start first?
Okay, my connection starts in 1968 because I am very old now. But I met, I was looking for a job in Harlem, New York.
Can you hear in the back?
No.
No. Okay.
I was looking, sometimes in life you kind of like say, I have to live a better way, and I was looking for something to change my lifestyle. I was living in Mount Vernon, New York, and I saw an ad in the paper, and for a secretary to a black economic development firm. So I said, let me go down there and see if I can check this out. It was on 125th Street, and I went down there. I was interviewed by Dot Waller, a major woman of Soul City, not here today, God bless her. And I was hired. And that same day, she said, well, wait a minute, you may want to meet Attorney McKissick. I had heard about him. I was like, oh, Attorney McKissick. Oh, I'm meeting an actual civil rights leader? This is blowing my mind. I couldn't really get into it. I met this man and I was mesmerized. Literally mesmerized. So from October of 1968 to the day we shut down in 1979, he and the Soul City Project changed my life. It changed my life seriously. So I worked in all the different departments of Soul City Foundation. I remember Eva Clayton was there at that point. But the one woman that I have to say that was my mentor, because I was a young girl, I was a young woman with 5 children. The one woman that stood by my side during all those years was Evelyn Williams McKissick. Because behind every great man, there's a great woman. She was beyond great. This woman, so my connection was they were family. We worked together on many different projects. The Warren Regional Planning Corporation, Soul City Foundation, Health Co. I remember I named the Health Co building on a grant at midnight one night. So to me, it was like, it's my life's blood. It literally is my life's blood. And so to see this happen here today, I just want to take Crystal, Charmaine, her brother. I mean, everyone's proud, by the way. You guys have done extremely well with your lives. So for me, it's my spirit. I live there, been there, and that's it.
I think so, because
you like me,
I can't hear you, so I talk loud. And I just want to tell all of y'all, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I want to tell all of y'all, I didn't go to Soul City came to me. And Mr. McKissick tried his best to tell everybody he knew that I lived in Soul City, but I did not. But you know, if I had to say this, and I think I am true, so if I'm not, Mr. McKissick was the only person that I have ever met in the United States that had the audacity to step out so low by himself and said, I'm from Villa City. Amen. You don't step out by yourself to build a house. And so he stepped, and that was his dream. And at the time my husband was living, my husband only lived like 2 years after it started, but he came home and I thought my husband was crazy. And he was telling me about Mr. McKissick and what was going to take place in Warren County and what was going to happen. And then I met Mr. McKissick, and Mrs. McKissick, Jane Baldwin said, was one of the best friends I'd ever had. We became just like, and Charmaine was like one of my children and her whole family. But you know, it has been a wonderful experience in my life, that a road that I would never have been able to travel if it had not been for Floyd McKissick in Soul City. I met many, many people from all over the state. I talked to James Brown, manager. It was just so great. And I don't know how long
so you can't get the
We
business.
supposed to speak, but I can stay up here until 5 o'clock. I'm not Jane. And Jane came, my husband told me, she said, first family is coming to Soul City. And I went over there. Jane's children had never been dirty. They didn't know how to play in dirt. They didn't know what weeds were. And she moved in. And it wasn't no Liberation Road. It was a path that hadn't even been named. And my husband was very instrumental in getting that road put on. He was the first one.
Dale Kearney was the first person hired by the McKissick Enterprises from Warren County.
But anyway, I just love to say that I could just say so much, and so the places we went, and the people that we met, and the meetings, and the hard work. Y'all don't know what hard is. But the work that we put in Soul City, and the free work we volunteered to do. Can I say this, Charmaine? When Mr. McKissick came to Soul City, he bought a bottle of wine. And he told all of us, wait a minute, we won't get drunk.
Okay.
But he told all of us that he was not going to open that bottle of wine until he got the confirmation from HUD that he would get the money for Soul City. And when he got that call in 1973, I was in the office here, and he was, Mr. McKissick heart is so loud and threw his legs a minute, and he fell over on the floor, and I thought the man had a stroke. But anyway, he called everybody in the city, Dr. Malone, and everybody that was there at the time, and we all had a little sip of the wine. So like I said, Soul City was started by something that nobody else would have never dreamed of. It brought the community in Warrenton together. It brought the young people together.
Yes, it did.
It brought experiences and jobs together. Yeah. And Soul City, I have you to know, it's not gone. Soul City is still Soul City. But anyway, I'm not.
Ms. Jackson, can I bring you the microphone, or you want to come on over
I
here?
think I talk loud enough.
Okay, all right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I can't talk about Jane and what Miss Kearney said, but I came from Vance County. And how we learned about Soul City was in the paper. And then my husband and I was thinking about building. And I told him, I said, we're going to get out of Vance County. We're not going to build in Vance County. So he brought me a paper home, said Soul City. And I said, Soul City? I said, what's Soul City? He said, yeah. He said, they was talking about it on the job. I said, okay. So we rolled down to Soul City to see what it's about. So at the same time, we wanted to build a house. So when we decided, and Mr. Seaman, he built home. He bought some property in Soul City. So when we went to him, that was confirmation that he said that I have some property that you might like. When he said Soul City, me and my husband looked at each other, so we had decided that's where we might want to go. So when he said that, that's how we got to Soul City with Seaman building a house on White Circle. So when I went there, because I'm from the country anyway, Vance County country anyway, and my husband came right from Henderson, but he thought he was in the city. So I told him, I said, this is beautiful land out here. I like it, and we wanted a corner lot. We had picked Pleasant Hill, but Pleasant Hill had not been developed for what we want, so we got that corner right there. And ever since then, and we moved in March of '76. We moved in March of '76. Road was paid, everything was paid, and I just loved it because it was quiet, it was country living, and I liked that. And when we moved there, that's where we met Floyd and his wife, Miss McKissick. And they never called us our name. She knew my Jackson, you know someone. She called me Jackson and called my husband Jackson. You know we did this when we had our chimney. We knew our chimney had caught on fire or something. And I'm from the Soul City Fire Department came, and the first one I saw was Miss Floyd McKissick. I came to the door. I said, "Is that Floyd McKissick?" What? She, the one that holds. I said, it was amazing. I said, and I told my husband, I said, "That's Floyd McKissick." She said, "Jackson, yeah, I can do this. I'm just like everybody else." So that impressed me that they worked together. Everybody was together, and that just impressed me to work together. And ever since I've been there, I loved it. When they told about Ihsan, because we knew what Ihsan was, and I was at home, I wasn't working at the time, and I would be out on my little deck, my patio, and cars would ride all the way by, and there was white folks riding by, I'm waving at them, they waving at me. So the one on stopped and asked about Soul City. I said, I don't know what what you mean with soul. I said, well, everybody have a soul. And I said, in the community of Black Power, I said, everybody got power. You got power of your own. And I was telling them that. I said, and I love it out here. And I say, the streets are paved, the light. I said, you never went no place that all the electricity were under the ground. That's one thing I liked about it. We didn't have no lights, no hanging under the ground. So, you know, I liked it that. So I just enjoy being there. Since I've been there, I've been in the community. I've been to the fire department when they had it. We were organized. And my husband became the chief of the Soul City Fire Department. And I just got involved with Miss Groom, Miss Charmaine, and Miss Floyd. So it's a nice place to be. It's a good place to invest in. So I manage the property at Soul City, Scott Mitchell Housing. And I love it. I love the people there. You come in. It's just a nice place to be. It's a nice place that we can get back on the map and say what we all about. We can still continue in what he had his dream. But we continue to do that. We just got to invest in it. We got to invest in something of our own to make it something of our own. So I wouldn't move no other place than to stay where I am right now. And they talked about my circle, white circle. I said, what white got to do with the circle? They just named the circle, you know. And when I got there, the architect stayed across the street from me. Miss Johnson stayed there, very boosted. Miss Kirkland, I just knew all of them because I was their children. Because I was young and they was older, and we moved there. So it's a good investment, and I love where I am, and I love what I do. We should invest in Soul City.
On the block. I was just kind of transported into Soul City. I originally came from New York, 1989, and I worked for Franklin Vance Warren Head Start program. And in the process, I was looking for some place to live. I needed a home. And it just so happened at that time that Franklin Vance Warren had a housing program. And I was speaking with someone, and said, oh, well, there's a house in Soul City. Never heard of Soul City. I think I may have heard of Floyd McKissick, you know, in New York. I really didn't know anything about him. So, make a long story short, I ended up getting this home in Soul City. A beautiful community. I had 4 young children. In fact, before I actually moved there, I needed some daycare. And someone told me about Soul City Daycare Center. And I took my children up there, and that's where they were going, to Soul City. So by the time I moved into Soul City, I loved the community. I loved the neighborhood. And when I would go back to work, or I'd meet people and they ask me, where do you live? And I said, Soul City. They was like, oh, Soul City. I didn't know. And this kind of continues, you know, where do you live? Soul City? I said, Soul City. Well, I better do some research on this Soul City, because, you know, it's just a community to me. But then I went to some of the city board meetings. I met Jamie. And I continued, and I continued, and I continued, and I worked to continue to keep Soul City alive. I've helped bring youth programs into Soul City. I worked with some things with the pool, doing different things with the pool. But I just feel privileged and honored that that I was blessed to live in such a town. It is a beautiful place. There's still a lot going on in Soul City. I think what's happening, though, sometimes in ownership, when people don't own, they don't buy in. So still working with some of the cities, we have a lot of rental, people who are renting now. And when you rent, you don't have that ownership. So that's one of the things that we're working on, is trying to bring people back to have some of that ownership and some of that pride in Soul City. And one more thing, after learning about Soul City, I really realized with Mr. McKissick that somebody can have a dream. One person. Now here I am in New York, and here he is in North Carolina. I never knew how this one man's dream could affect my life.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Wilhelmina says she forgot to say something, so I must defer.
Like I told you, I have so much I can say. My husband was living. We needed a black lawyer in Warren County, and I don't know how my husband got up into everything. But I would like for y'all to recognize Mr. Go ahead. Mr. T.T. Clay, Attorney T.T. Clay. And he's the first black lawyer in Warren County. He stayed in the house with me and my husband and family for about a year, I think, when Miss Clay was going. But anyway, I just want to say.
6 months. He said 6 months.
And he was very, very, very you all couldn't leave without me saying that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So ended up in Warren County.
Oh.
And it was because of TT, Clay. In reality, because he had seen this little piece of project years ago, before me, way before we ever moved to New York. They talked about some sort of co-op in Warren County. And so he was familiar with it, and TT was here in Eva, of course, so all of those does go back to TT. I see a couple other people in the audience I do need to at least note that are here. One, of course, my husband, Mr. Tyrone Melton, with the North Carolina Association of Educators. Just wave my name. I always jokingly say that my sister Joycelyn, many of you might remember her too, she had a significant role in some of the nonprofits in the area. And evidently you know how it is when the babies come out and you imprint on somebody? Well, this person was imprinted. Earlene Suit. When I want my sister Joycelyn, I just call Earlene, because she's just like her, and Joycelyn raised her. So, Earlene. And still loves purple too, just like Joycelyn. And I also see somebody from way back in the day who was instrumental in putting this together too, but he's not in the film because you have to cut some stuff. It's called Roll B, it's what's on the floor. And that's Mr. Lou Myers. In the back of the room. So Lou, would you like to add any comments?
Yes.
No. I figured that. We came back and
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to open it up for some questions, and then I'm going to see how long we can do that, and then I'm going to give it to Eva to close it up. So questions for people.
The film, I loved it, just loved it. And I respect all of you and all the hard work you've done. What bothers me, and I have this conversation, I live in New York, but I'm back in North Carolina, and we have this conversation on the job all the time. What bothers me is that in the African American community, we don't seem to be able to learn the very difficult lesson of who our friends are and who our friends are not, who are not our friends. And when we find somebody who our friends, we throw our arms around them, we'll vote for you, Hillary, come on, Kennedy, we're there with you, Hubert, we're with you. But then we get people who don't support us, that don't like us, with the phony, we get all timid and kind of quiet. And, well, Hillary, if you win, we hope you will come to Warrenton and help us out. If you win, Hillary, that bothers me. And that's the other flip side that I respect the Republicans on, even though I don't like anything about Trump, is that at least with the Republicans, they say, you know what? We're going to do this, and that, because you said you're going to support us. And when they win, the people that voted for them, they're right on their behind. Not to use bad language, sorry. We're right on their behind. You promised such, and you're going to give it to us. And I don't see that same enthusiasm from the Democrats. When the Democrat wins, we kind of sit back and say, well, Hillary will give us, Kennedy will give us, Hubert Humphrey will give, if they win. And that bothers me. Now, on this project, my question is, how much more difficult was it when you didn't have the very popular black, safe black politicians backing you up, like people from Dr. King or the spirit of Malcolm, all those very popular who didn't come rushing down. Maybe you did. I didn't see it in the film. Come rushing down there. You got to back. You got to back. Did they come for your support, or did they back off?
What I would say is, I don't think there was a lack of support there. They were diverted by doing what they do every day in their own entities.
Okay.
I give a lot of speeches frequently, of course, because who my dad is and my degrees and stuff. And I have one speech to talk about a 10-year period in the civil rights movement. It goes kind of from 1955, sort of when Rosa sat down. It's also the year I was born. And Emmett Till died. To 1965. And kind of what I say is, in 66 we had the Great Meredith March in Mississippi. And that's really the last major march. Because at that point, the whole country is diverted in a lot of different ways. We have the Vietnam War era where we have people going. We also have something that most people don't even think about anymore. You know, we had the Gray Panthers, the old folks, okay, started coming out. We have the women's movement and burning bars. So we have a lot of divergent paths, I think, going in that same time frame. There's a famous picture, maybe on the cover of Newsweek magazine, and has 5 of the African American leaders of that time, 19. It says, "Which way for the Negro now?" And we have Floyd McKissick with CORE. We have Roy Wilkins with the NAACP. We have Dr. King with SCLC. We have Whitney Young with the Urban League. I'm missing somebody. Help me. But anyway. So I would not want to put that burden to say that the other brothers and sisters did not help us in that time frame. No, I don't think that's it. I think it's more what Harvey Gantt said. We didn't have an Oprah Winfrey who had big time billions of dollars. We didn't have a LeBron James. You understand what I'm saying? We did not have
Beyonce.
That's right, exactly, okay, Jay-Z. We did not have billionaires that looked like us. So we had to rely upon the white community for that economic base. And unfortunately, that trickle-down theory did not work so well because most of the money was not in the hands of people who looked like us.
But
So,
let me
you want to add
add,
something else?
yeah, let me just add, your statement about why were we not supporting one another, the blacks were not supporting the blacks.
Microphone.
I want to echo what Charmaine said. Remember, we were coming out of a time, I'm sorry, go ahead. We were coming out of a time after the Civil Rights Movement. All these men you mentioned, King, he had his part of stuff that he had to do. Stokely Carmichael had taken over CORE after McKissick left. They all had their, but this is the point. A group of men and black women came together for a cause. But they began to spread out. McKissick built a new city. King changed the world. So I don't think it was not that we didn't have support.
Right.
We were just so busy trying to get everything done. You got to remember that, because we don't have that today. Back in the day, we had some strong black men and black women. We need to have that again today.
It was 10 new towns growing up in the United States, in the southern part of the United States. And if you are familiar with HUD, you know how HUD works. What it was, out of the 10 new towns that was coming up across the United States, Soul City was the only one that was standing solo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess y'all remember
And
Columbia
yeah.
over near Washington.
That's
and
right.
Maryland.
That's right.
But so, and you know, a lot of times, it's what you don't see is what bothers you. We don't see a snake laying back there, not right now, but if he come up here, then we all have a fit. But what I'm trying to say is, people don't realize what's under the ground in Soul City and the millions of dollars that was
Even now.
spent that nobody can see.
If you want to come to Warren County,
Yes, amen.
and there's an economic commissioner, can you help me on this one? If you're coming to Warren County and you want to, it is the location we suggest in Warren County to go for economic development because of infrastructure on the ground in Soul City. Can I get an amen?
Yeah.
Get a bunch of amens.
Okay. Okay. I know I had a question here and I see a question there, so let's get a few more
The
people.
question was
Comment.
more or less a comment. The film was absolutely wonderful. It took me back. I was listening to someone talking about the connection for McKissick in North Carolina, her in New York. I was a junior in high school, and in my civics class, I learned about Soul City. And it inspired in me this thing. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be there because of the identity. You know, the identity of me. You know, someone doing something that at that particular time in growing up, we were being inspired to do, to step up, to be what others thought that we couldn't be. And I got a job in Warrenton, North Carolina, not knowing that Soul City was in Warren
Oh
County.
my gosh,
North
you're kidding.
Carolina. And when I got the job, and when I got here, I found out that this is where Soul City was, and I got to meet Floyd McKissick personally. And looking at the film, Harvey Gantt, my first march that I'd ever experienced was led by Harvey Gantt. I was 14 years old. And the people that have that evolved from Soul City, I have gotten to meet you. So it is like an earth-changing thing for me to be in your presence today and to know that that dream is real and that dream continues. If it would be a question that I could ask is, one of the things that hurt my heart is when I drove over to Soul City one day for a particular gathering by the Warren Family Institute. And I did not know that the prison was right there at the entrance. I did not know. I knew that there was, the prison was being built, and it was supposedly in Manson, North Carolina. And I'm thinking all of those woods and stuff out there, you know, it would be somewhere over in the woods. And this thing got to me. How did that happen? I mean, how did something like that happen to a dream to like kind of tell you, okay, this is where your dream is going to take you?
Well, that one little piece of land where the prison itself versus the janitorial products, we'll get there, was actually the one piece of land that we were not able to buy from Mr. Collins. Good old segregationist. That's the one chunk that would have been 5,000, whatever, 880 acres. He stayed there till he died and his son. So someone else sold it. And so now Soltech 1, I'll be honest, the first couple of times I drove down that street and saw the barbed wire, I literally cried. It used to be my dad's office. But you know, you have to take things in stride. This has happened. So all it really does is justify the Ford McKissick got a good idea from the very beginning, because it is where the economic development is in Warren County right now, is all that land right around Soul City. And it's the largest employer in Warren County. No, that is not what he had in mind. That is not what he had in mind. But we have to look at, and I've gone to the prison and talked to folks, because the reality is, as my father said, you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So yeah, I want to know what's there. And what's over there? Everything is over there except for death row. Okay, I've been, believe me. Okay, so I know what's in my back. You know what's in my corner. I can't change that. So what I have to do now is look at it from a positive perspective. Just like I said to the commissioner, even now, if you want to come to Warren County to develop, it is that same chunk of land where the infrastructure exists.
Well, will that deter persons from coming in to invest?
Well, it may or may not. I mean, there have been a couple of large chunks that people have wanted to buy through the years. I think there are a lot of other concerns that are not just about Soul City. Some of it's about Warren County.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't have young children. And so, you want to say something, Commissioner?
Well, I just want to say that really true. I didn't know what Soul City was. Actually, when my dad used to go through Warren County, and I used to use the Soul City sign, I thought it was like Soul Train. I don't know.
Okay.
But I mean, really, I didn't. And this, my hat's off to you, because, you know, I see you young ladies up there, and the movement. I was going back what the gentleman said, that, you know, back in the day, y'all had a movement, you had a cause, you had a purpose. And a lot of times I associate myself, of course, with the younger crowd, that, you know, we're still riding on y'all's wave. And that's where the issue is. You know, it was not intended for that. It was for us to pass it every time to move on. But I'm saying this, I look up there and I see the panel of young ladies. I have 3 daughters. And, you know, I look at them and I say, you know, what is their movement? What is going to be inspired by them for them to move on? And I would transition over this. Warren County is a great place to live. Of course, I'm an implant from Halifax County, but if you know anything about Warren County business, we are a diamond sitting on the top, just for somebody to walk by and pick us up. And it's coming. And it's all because of the entire family, dad, everybody here that had contributed to the infrastructure of Warren County. Hey, our future is very bright as the sun. So my hat's off to you, and I tell you thank you.
Let me go to some other people. The blue reality, thank you. Is this. Healthco's been gone for a moment. There were some extenuating circumstances there. But now we have another problem, because it's my understanding that both buildings have basically lost their infrastructure through people stealing the pipes and the... So it will cost a lot more for anyone who wants to go and try to develop either one of the buildings. The assisted living center, quite frankly, my family was unaware that it had been sold at one point. We had given the name to one entity and it took on a couple other people down the road. But at any rate, it's my understanding that that is the problem right now with those 2 structures, is that the cost to recreate what was there in terms of the plumbing, heating, AC, is a significant number of dollars. And so I don't have an answer. I'm in agreement with you that it would be great if we could modify and change that. I work full-time as a professor at North Carolina Central University, and maybe sometime in the near future when I look towards partial retirement, I can look into doing additional things. Right now, that commute up and down the road is almost all I can manage, and I have personally chosen to put my efforts in terms of Warren County in one particular arena, which is with the Soul City Parks and, Soul City Parks and Recreation Association, but also I'm now on the Warren County Parks and Rec Commission as a co-chair. And in fact, the commissioners just recently approved another Parte grant for that facility. So it is still, of course, the only public pool in Warren County. And there was one small grant a few years ago which helped to deal with the signage and some of the landscaping and so forth. This time, praise God, this Parte grant, after 40 years, nothing majorly structurally been done to the pool house. This time we will have a total revamp of the pool house. We will have another picnic area, and a couple other things that will be improved around the Parks and Rec facility. I can personally only do so much at a time, so I've chosen to put my personal efforts in that arena. I see one other person who wanted to comment, so I can't deny my husband, Mr. Tyrone Melton. Is taken care of, and his house is taken care of, and most 90% of the time his door is taken care of too. He's absolutely right. So I'm going to challenge you. If maybe perhaps we can find a way to show this film within certainly all the high schools in Warren County, middle schools too, and I will work with you on doing that. Yes.
We're doing that this summer, with the summer reading.
Cool.
And we have all the children in our school this summer. Chris and I talked about it already, and so that's something, that was what I had already planned on doing. This summer, the theme is Build a Better World.
This is Ms. Reddish, in case you don't know, the director of the library.
So that's something that we plan on doing. I've spoken to UNC TV. We're going to do some other things with them. So we're really trying to, keep building. We want some young faces in the place.
Absolutely.
Bring somebody next time.
You're dying to say something.
Yes, I am.
Oh, what? The clock's ticking. Go ahead.
Looking at those pictures of those afros and bell bottoms and platforms, maybe we need to have an old school festival out there in Soul City. Old school. Bring it folk from
There's a
destination.
That's a good idea.
My husband's been dreaming of a reggae concert for about 25 years, so we may have to modify it.
There is one thing that is kind of quiet, but there are young people, young men, that are talking about reinvesting into Soul
Yes.
City here in Warren County. And they're very serious about this. And
Well, let's talk
it is
after.
something to be on the lookout for.
Before I introduce Ms. Clayton, I did want to say that Jane has an autobiographical piece called The Salad Pickers about her journey down south. She only has a few copies in the back, but if you're interested in purchasing a copy, please try to see her at the end of the program. In the meantime, for some remarks from a Soul Cityite who I cannot actually remember not knowing when I was a little girl and learning to read. TT actually stayed at the house briefly when he was going to law school. I know he had to get tired, but he would allow me to read that one book. I read it in English one direction and flipped, and read it in French in the other direction. He let me do that for like an hour on end. It must have been exceptionally boring, but he's always been a sweetie pie, and they've both been part of my life, and they are family, so Eve Clayton.
Isn't that a wonderful group of folks? Now, I haven't gotten to know all of you as well as I know these people, but actually, Wilhelmina is right. She was kind enough to let my husband stay at her home and fed it. I hope he paid you. I don't know. But first, I want to give kudos to Miss Myra Kendrick. Yes. She called me earlier today and shared with me how nervous she was, and asked if I needed anything. And I told her that part of being nervous is mean that you have invested in this and that you want it to go very well. So thank you for investing in this and believing that there was some advantage of bringing us old folks together and reminisce and to reflect. A young man who, now you say there's no young, everybody's younger than me here, but anyhow, there is a young man standing up there. And to see some of the old friends that I haven't seen, and actually, I'm gonna stay with my script, okay? It won't be long. But I wanted to reflect in a very limited way, but I want to reflect on the significance of Soul City to me as a person, and then wanted to reflect on Soul City as me in its development. Actually, Floyd McKissick, as you know, had the vision of Soul City. Floyd McKissick is a driving force of Soul City. Floyd McKissick indeed was a part of our life early on, and Charmaine said, not only did he visit Homeland's law school, but Floyd is the first person who gave Steve a job as a lawyer. He was working in his law firm when the dean of the law school came and said, you have this opportunity to form the first integrated law firm in North Carolina. And Floyd gave his blessing, pushed him out to do it, and that's how we got to North Carolina. Floyd said, go my son, go. And so we came, at least they came in 1961, David Wilhelmina, and later on the children and I came to Warrenton in 1962. So Floyd has been indeed a part of our lives. Now all of us need to remember that 1960, you usually do 55, 65, but I'm just saying the decade of 1960, and we were introduced to the Soul City concept by Floyd. We were 1969 in some depth. The printed thing indicates that it was 1968, but anyhow, in depth actually, Floyd spoke to us in some detail about wanting and commissioned me to go find land and that kind of thing. But in that period of time, you have to remember everything is done in context, and the context in which this was developed. Floyd, indeed, you had the civil rights movement there. You had the March on Washington earlier. You had Floyd in 1966 becoming the chair of CORE. You had Eva Clayton in 1968 running for Congress and losing bid. You had Martin Luther King in 1968 being killed. Earlier you had President Kennedy and his brother being killed. It was a very, very busy and a very tumultuous time. But Floyd, in his own mind, came to this conclusion that indeed, if you wanted to have freedom and liberty, you needed to do it through an economic path. And out of this Black Power movement, he saw an opportunity in his mind that you needed to do it economically. Not only to demonstrate, he demonstrated as much as anybody and felt we should demonstrate. He saw liberty, he demonstrated because he saw injustice, he saw violence, and he demonstrated for freedom and liberty. But in his mind, he wanted to have us as a people, and us as a people didn't mean just black. He would tell you that. Many of them, and you know, I had this conversation. I said, Florida, if you had a problem with Soul City, why aren't you stuck on Soul City? He said, Eva Clayton, what are you telling me? Everybody got soul. You know what I'm saying? He said that over and over. Because they have a problem with soul, don't you have a problem with soul? But he saw this opportunity for economic development, and he was introduced to this idea of a new town concept. Now, Floyd was introduced to it, and he's shown that, and he came, and in his mind, only in Floyd, you're right, but the concept of new town was developed way before Floyd got involved, but only Floyd saw a new concept being put in a rural area. Most new towns are either adjacent to or very close. So the idea, the vision that you could come and bring that concept in a rural, poor Warren County was Floyd's own, his idea. It was his idea. And what that did for me in person, I want to tell you, it stimulated me. I, like Reverend Kearney, wanted to be a missionary. I too wanted to be a doctor missionary in Africa before I married T.T. Clayton, and everything else went. Anyhow, Soul City and through Floyd, it gave me, as a human being, as a woman, an opportunity to be in something very great, something magnificent. So I felt very honored. So I felt personally very good. Now, when I think about the development itself, the development attracted a lot of talented people. Jane Groom, Lou Myers, a lot of people across the country, not only across the country, but internationally. We had international. The idea, those of us who thought we could see a vision, we knew Floyd had the big vision. And we were excited to be a part of that. And indeed, that development in attracting people, it allowed the people in Soul City to interact with the community. And most of the people in the community were elated or excited because they didn't know what a new town was, to be honest, but they didn't know what a new town concept was. To be honest, I didn't either. It was a word he told me. I learned later because I was involved in it. But what they saw was JOBS, jobs. They saw opportunities. Now the relationship with the local government was something else. It was a little timid. They weren't sure whether to be for it or against it, but they wanted to be for it because so they saw the potential economic development. And the relationship action faction with the state was either hands off or push back, at least at first. A little later they changed. And with the federal government, it was actually support until Senator Helms and the media got the best of it. But in that development, there were certain principles that I want you to relate to. One was the principle that Floyd understood, and hopefully we understand too, is that you don't do anything in life by yourself. Anything of significance requires coordination, cooperation for others. Anything worthwhile in life, you must find how you help others as you help yourself. And to the extent you help others, you help yourself. Now, that may be because Reverend Kearney and I have this missionary zeal, but that's true in business, too. If that product can't sell and be of value to me, pretty soon that product goes away. Floyd understood that well because he integrated with people. Sometimes he didn't realize. I know that. But he had the bigger goal. He said you have to work with others in order to achieve that. And you have to find coordination with them. Case in point, Soul City was not developed in and by itself. Soul City had to interrelate with this county government, had to interrelate with the regional government, and as a result, though it looked like you pulling teeth in order to do the regional part, because I was a part of that discussion. By the way, I want to say this. Soul City benefited from the Clayton. I can tell you. It was the experience of being in Soul City. Now, I came from the university in order to work for Soul City. At that time, I was working in the School of Medicine. But I came because I was excited about being involved in a complex development. Being involved in a complex development actually paved the way for me to be involved in the state, then later in the nation, and then later internationally involved in putting alliances around the world. Part of Soul City's principle was you can develop, you have a vision, but you can get other people to get that vision. In order to achieve that, you have to bring people struggling, some willing, some unwilling, but the result of that is that regional water system. Another point. Soul City taught me too, you shouldn't be afraid of being the first or be afraid of failure. Health Code is a good example. Health Code was the very first regional program center in the United States. I told you I worked for the University of North Carolina in the med school. Dr. Sheps and Dr. Bernstein loved Floyd McKissick. And in that, Dr. Bernstein helped me and helped others to create Soul City. It was not done on my mind. It was not done in Florida. But Florida had that ability to know how to attract people and get them engaged. And as a result of that, Bernstein became the National Director of Rural Health of the United States. And there are now more than, I guess, about 100 health clinics. One here in Warren County, one in North Carolina. Soul City was the impetus for that. You shouldn't be afraid of stepping out. You shouldn't be afraid of failure. What's the last point I want to make? Hey, Floyd said it was supposed to be 30 years. All I want to tell you, the future of Soul City means that the next generation of visionaries, they may not be here, but we must inspire them. And then we must be willing to support them. You don't get anywhere by yourself. Thank God for success.
I know the clock is ticking, and the library does close at 2 o'clock on Saturday, but I want to thank Crystal, bring her back up and let her close out, because she's the real reason for this.